My 34 male, wife 26 female had a miscarriage. Her mother is telling her it is her fault. I think my wife is beginning to believe her. To my husband, I went to see a marriage counselor and he canceled our plans, went back to bed, then left without telling anyone where he was going.
Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started.
My 34 male, wife 26 female had a miscarriage. Her mother is telling her it is her fault. I think my wife is beginning to believe her. Good morning. I am 34-year-old male. My wife is 26 female. She is a microbiologist and I am a chemical engineer. We have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter, and earlier this year, we were blessed with another pregnancy. Unfortunately, there were complications in the pregnancy and we lost the baby. It was a tragic, terrible time for our family, but my wife handled it with more grace, love, and compassion than I ever thought possible. She was so focused on comforting out our 2-year-old, who was heartbroken. We had already found out the gender of the baby, and although she didn't understand everything, she still understood that she was going to have a younger sister. That I don't think my wife fully processed the loss herself. Her parents live in a different country. I have met them a handful of times, but my wife isn't very close to her family. She left home very young and only sees them every once in a while. She always told me her mom was cruel as a child and her father had been a negligent alcoholic. She told her parents about the pregnancy but not about the loss. A few weeks ago, she got a phone call from her mother that they were coming to the country to stay with my wife's older sister for weeks and they wanted to come to visit us. When my in-laws arrived at our house, I wasn't at home. I was at work, but my wife, who had taken a few days off for their visit, spent the entire day with them. They were supposed to stay over our house for 2 days, but by that time I arrived home, they weren't there. When I went in and asked my wife what had happened, she wouldn't talk about it until our daughter went asleep. Once she did, my wife burst into tears and told me that when her mother had found out about the miscarriage, she berated her, asking her what she had done wrong, insisting that she hadn't taken care of herself or the baby right. She went as far as to say my wife must not have been being a good mother to our 2-year-old, so she had her baby taken from her. Needless to say, my wife told her parents to leave and they are no longer welcome in our house. However, after this incident, I've noticed my wife has become very withdrawn and much quieter. I am worried that she is focusing on what her mother said and believes it. I have encouraged her to go to therapy, but due to a very bad experience with a therapist, not licensed, not a real therapist when she was a teen, she is reluctant to seek help. I am trying my best to meet her needs and help her get to heal, but my worried since I'm not a professional, I don't know how best to help her. I want to make her feel better the way she makes everyone else feel better, and I feel guilty that I cannot. Any advice in this situation would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. To my husband, I went to see a marriage counselor and he canceled our plans, went back to bed, then left without telling anyone where he was going. My husband and I generally have a pretty good relationship. We have an 11-month daughter who we adore, good jobs, and a nice home. So overall, we have a good life together. However, my husband suffers from depression and can be irritable a lot of time. He had sought treatment, but his psychiatrist put him on meds that didn't work and then refused to listen to my husband's feedback. So he dropped the meds and the doctor. I don't blame him for this as I've had similar issues with the mental health community in the past. And to the parents, my mother-in-law and I used to have a very good relationship. But when I got pregnant, things changed. I think before I got pregnant, we didn't have much to disagree about. But once she found out baby was on the way, she became a lot less considerate. Most of this relates to completely ignoring my concerns regarding COVID because they interfere with her doing what she wants in terms of family gatherings and events. My parents love my husband and they get along very well. Although I think my husband gets frustrated with my parents a lot because they can be kind of flaky. This is relevant because my dad is here staying with us for a few days. My husband and I have discussed his mom before and he did go off on her one time for a COVID-related incident when I was pregnant. But he has since decided that her behavior is not going to change, so he's not going to try. He says, if I want to set boundaries with her, that's on me. So yesterday, his mom came down to visit. We were trying to plan out a bunch of errands and I essentially walked through the timeline like, if we do X now and it takes 15 minutes, then we do Y and it takes 30 minutes. We should be able to get to Z before it closes. He and his mother shot each other a look and he rolled his eyes. I asked him about it later and he told me he was annoyed because he didn't see the point in walking through it step by step. I told him I thought it was disrespectful, particularly because his mom disrespecting me is a frequent occurrence he knows upsets me. Now he's encouraging her to do it. He got pissed off and told me he was just sharing his opinions and he had a right to do so. We went to bed after that. This morning, the baby woke up at 5 and I got up with her. He came out of our room at about 6:30 and asked if I needed help. I told him no. He went back to bed until 8:30. I did some chores around the house and then he asked me what I wanted to do today, so I told him I wanted to go on a walk. He suggested some places and we picked one. I had some things I needed to do before we left, so my dad took the baby outside. When he did, I told my husband I wanted to see a marriage counselor and I'd found one halfway between our jobs. He asked me why we needed to see a counselor and I told him I thought we had things to work on. Then he asked if it was just his mom or other things. I told him it was other things, but his mom was definitely part of it. He said he'd go to counseling. I asked him if he wanted to know how I felt, and he said sure. I told him that I felt like I was pulling more than my fair share in terms of childcare, household chores, and financially, and he thought all the things considered I deserved to be respected in my own home. He gave me a look and then stopped talking. I finished up what I was doing, and when I was done, he told me he didn't want to go on a walk anymore. I said okay. He went back to bed. I checked on him before I left and he said he was fine. When I got home, he was still in bed. I was exhausted after waking up at 5 this morning, so my dad offered to watch the baby while I napped. I went in and lay down in bed and about 20 minutes later he got up and left. When I got up about 20 minutes later, he was gone. I asked my dad where he went and he said, I don't know. He came out, thanked me for watching the baby, then got in his car and left. I tried calling him but he didn't answer. I was a little worried because he never just leaves without telling someone where he's going. I tried him again about 10 minutes later and he answered and said he was at his friend's house. I told him I was worried because he left without telling anyone where he was going, to which he replied, You were asleep. I told him he could have told my dad, and he was like, okay, sorry, I'm fine. That was the end of it. I have no idea when he'll be home. I want him to have time with his friends, but this wasn't planned time, and he didn't bother to talk to anyone before leaving. I'm really hurt and don't know what to say to him when he gets home. But I feel like this has made things worse between us.